he's talking about there's more footage. There's 140 hours that he has, and each episode was only maybe an hour, I think. There was 4 episodes, so there's at least 130 something more hours that he hasn't edited or produced.
For some reason, Diddy, around the time of his arrest, thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be exonerated later, so I'm going to film all this, and then I can use it in my big comeback later when I'm not in jail. Didn't work out the way he thought, and it turns out he went to jail for a few years. All right, he didn't get the full amount, but he still got a few years. And 50 Cent somehow managed to pay for the footage off of the videographer. Probably Diddy's worst nightmare, this. It's got to be up there. Now, we're going to get into what's in the actual documentary, and hell, it's something.
Anything that surprised you from that footage?
The footage, well, I mean, it was really interesting to see his last days of freedom, and what was sort of important to him. Obviously, there's phone calls with his attorneys, with his team. It was very interesting to watch a man who's known for his brand presence. He has a really amazing knack for marketing and all of that, and how he was sort of taking that into account in how he was coming off to the public, in the days leading up to his arrest and indictment.
Like 3 or 4 pictures in the documentary that I've seen of myself. Some people say they saw more, but I know three different times where I was certain places and you could actually see me in the documentary, and that's the only thing you're going to get.
As Netflix launched Sean Combs, The Reckoning, numerous spectators perceived something peculiar almost instantly. The narrative was heavy. The contentions were grave. The chronology was unsettling. Furthermore, there existed a subtle sensation that something was absent. Not evidence, but instances. Not charges, but responses. It appeared as though segments of the account were meticulously structured, modified, and mitigated. That is where the gossip regarding unreleased recordings commenced to expand. Based on informants, the documentary possessed access to significantly more documentation than what was ultimately displayed. Footage that did not merely clarify what occurred, but disclosed how Diddy reacted when everything surrounding him began disintegrating. This was not aged historical content. This was captured merely days preceding his 2024 detention at a moment when tension was at its peak. What renders this circumstance even more peculiar is who was sponsoring the documentary. 50 Cent, a persistent antagonist who has never concealed his opinions, and Gene Deal, a man who once stood directly beside Diddy for years. That combination alone provoked skepticism, but when judicial warnings succeeded the documentary's debut, it verified something more profound was occurring. Netflix asserts the recordings they utilized were acquired lawfully. Diddy's representatives claim confidential material was plundered. 50 Cent implies there is much more currently unviewed. And Gene Deal states this is only the exterior. Consequently, the genuine inquiry becomes basic. What did Netflix elect not to display and why?
For some reason, Diddy, around the time of his arrest, thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be exonerated later, so I'm going to film all this, and then I can use it in my big comeback later when I'm not in jail. Didn't work out the way he thought, and it turns out he went to jail for a few years. All right, he didn't get the full amount, but he still got a few years. And 50 Cent somehow managed to pay for the footage off of the videographer. Probably Diddy's worst nightmare, this. It's got to be up there. Now, we're going to get into what's in the actual documentary, and hell.
We need the core theme to be, you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong on any front.
By the way, these conversations, the lawyer had no idea he was recording them. So when the lawyer's like, yeah, we need everyone to believe you did nothing wrong, it kind of takes away from when the lawyer is out in public saying, yeah, my client is completely innocent, and now he's showing the behind the scenes where he clearly didn't think he was very innocent. So not Diddy's smartest move, however, throughout this journey, you'll see he makes a lot of crazy decisions.
I don't think it's working. I listened. I've been a superb client, as you said. I jumped on the plane. I'm coming to New York, but I'm just running around waiting for a shoe to drop.
He's shitting himself right now, in case you can't tell, and he really doesn't look good.
It's the middle of September, and there's still no indictment.
Bro, then you have to have a spokesman. You have to have some sort of comms to constantly be pushing that, Mark. Because you may just be a person that you just may watch CNN. You know what I'm saying? And there's 9 billion people in the world, and 7 billion of them is on Instagram. and TikTok.
He's basically trying to get control of the narrative. That's what he's really worried about. He wants public perception to be, this was all bullshit. Unfortunately for him, we'd all seen the CCTV of him beating the shit out of Cassie, so like, we know you're not a good guy, man. That's out there. A statement from your solicitor is really not going to change that.
We have to find somebody that'll work with us, whether they're from this country or from another country. It could be somebody that has dealt in the dirtiest of dirty business of media and propaganda.
We need to brainwash some motherfuckers right now, and we need people who are used to working with the dirtiest of dirty, because that's what he is, and he's admitting it. How could you let this footage fall into the hands of 50 Cent, my guy? And honestly, it always comes down to money with Diddy, because Diddy didn't get rich just because he was, you know, clever in music. Diddy got rich because he robbed people all the time, and him not taking care of the people around him, it just comes back to bite him a million times over.
It's like we have a movie, you're speaking this language, and you know what I'm saying, we need subtitles. And we're not providing the audience with subtitles. And I invited you to this movie, and you in this thing, you don't know what's going on. You just see, you just see the images, you know, quickly. Now, it has a whole life of its own.
I gotta say, this whole doc was edited well. When you just see the pictures and they cut to the CCTV. Well done, 50. You nailed that, son. If you're going to take him down in style. So you get a clear window from the jump here into Diddy's psyche. He doesn't give a about Cassie or any of these girls. He doesn't give a about anyone. It's save yourself mentality, and it's crisis mode. And you can see on his face, like, well, you know he's got a problem. This is at an all-time high of his taking, surely, because he is stressed stuff.
The most discussed recordings concentrate on the concluding period preceding Diddy's September 2024 detention. This was not an individual oblivious to peril. This was someone who recognized the barriers were collapsing. Lenses reportedly tracked him throughout consultations, telephone interactions, and confidential instances that were never intended to be accessible. One segment currently extensively debated displays Diddy within a suite on speakerphone with his primary solicitor. His tone is quiet, restrained, but the vocabulary carries significance. He confesses they are failing, not battling, not postponed, failing. That solitary acknowledgement transformed everything. Influential personalities seldom communicate that way unless alternatives are vanishing. Based on accounts, the dialogue progresses beyond judicial protection and into image preservation. Debates concerning regulating the story, regarding swaying societal awareness, about locating individuals skilled in the gloomiest sectors of media distortion. This is why Diddy's legal representatives responded so hostily. They contend these were private tactical deliberations, never meant for communal discharge. They claim this footage transcends a boundary. Netflix dissents. So does 50 Cent. What renders this recording disturbing is not merely what is declared, but when it is declared. This was captured before apprehension, before restraints, before tribunals. It traps unfiltered consciousness. The epiphany that authority, wealth, and quietness might no longer be sufficient. And once spectators comprehend that this documentation exists, it becomes difficult to trust what we witnessed on screen was the complete narrative. One of the greatest enigmas is how this footage even finished outside Diddy's authority. Based on reports, Diddy had been developing a private biography, recording himself significantly. He desired his own interpretation of occurrences archived possibly to launch later or to maintain his reputation.
50, how'd you get it, and what does that scene show?
Well, I mean, you know, you're a journalist, Harvey. Harvey, you would not disclose your sources.
We usually don't.
Yeah, but I got it. Yeah.
What he said.
and what do you think it conveys? Because we see someone trying to pull the strings and talking about, he would say affecting, others would say manipulating the public views of the allegations.
I think that, you know, one big theme of the series is to go behind the scenes to really understand how brilliant you could say Sean Combs is at marketing, at owning his narrative, controlling the narrative at all times. And so why would that stop, you know, when his life is on the line? So I think that, you know, on its face, that's what it is. But as you get deeper in the film, you start to realize, you know, perhaps how some of these these tactics, how they really came to present themselves, during the trial.
You show that, his abilities, his early rise. Right. Alexandra, you also give time to victims of the alleged abuse. Some of the cases are in different procedural postures. And you show victims who were women and men. Why is that important?
Because, victims of sexual assault, sexual violence, gender should not be a part of that conversation. When you are a victim, you are a victim. And I think that, this series was a platform in a way for these alleged victims to come forward, give their truth, put context to their situations when so much of it was ripped out, and we just the world was going for the salacious headlines, and they really had the time to tell their story.
Yeah, and the film takes us way behind the PR or propaganda machine. You see Diddy the day he's finding out about new suits against him while he's in New York preparing for a possible criminal arrest.
Although it is not stated explicitly, this strategy of Diddy's disintegrated behind the curtains. Agreements were incomplete. Remittances were postponed. Confidence collapsed. And when that occurs, recordings become influence. Informants assert the cinematographers, uncertain of their judicial position and irritated by violated pacts, traded the footage. That is where 50 Cent's creation crew purportedly intervened. 50 Cent has never validated precise specifics, but he has never repudiated recognizing what exists either. Rather, he mocked it. Digital publications, mysterious jests, suggestions that he had observed things others had not. This was not unintentional. It was coercion, mental intimidation. Netflix maintained its stance that the recordings were lawfully procured. However, legality does not eliminate unease, particularly when the footage displays an influential personality disintegrating in actual duration. Once the recordings departed possession, the equilibrium transitioned. Authority was vanished. Modification capability pertained to others. And abruptly, a gentleman who once regulated entire chambers could not regulate his own reputation. That deprivation of authority is what renders the unreleased recordings so hazardous.
That 50 didn't have the power to do anything, but they using his name to push the whole documentary. And that's what it was about. So that's why you don't see a cameo other than the pictures they used of me on the film in the documentary. I got 3 or 4 pictures in the documentary that I've seen of myself. Some people say they saw more, but I know three different times where I was certain places that you could actually see me in the documentary, and that's the only thing you're gonna get. But the stories that they told in the documentary, bruh, come on. They could have went a whole lot deeper. They could have did a whole lot more. So I ain't in the documentary because that lady that was the director, I think, what's her name? Alex Stapleton. You know her name, Mighty? Yo, Mighty, just give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna look this up, all right? Okay. Her name is Alex Stapleton. The director that I spoke to was Alex Stapleton. She was the one who told me that she was the director, she was the producer, whatever, this, that, and the third, the whole 9 yards. And she was talking mad greasy to me. And listen here, it's no matter, after you talk that kind of talk to me, it's no amount of money she could have paid me anyway for me to get in there. My story is more too valuable, getting in the depth or getting in depth with this whole stuff, and it would have helped that documentary a whole lot. You know what I'm saying? In actually, they used all the stuff that I told them and did it the way that I was saying do it. Tim Dog started off with the childhood with Puff and the whole 9 yards. Kirk Burrows do the business part, but they was trying to put people in there like Mark Curry and other people to talk about the streets or what was going on, a certain thing. But Mark can only say so much, because he was an artist, so he wasn't with Puff like I was with him during that time when we was running back and forth here and there and the whole 9 yards. So, Miss Alex Stapleton is the one reason why I'm not in the documentary, but it's all right with me. I've been in a lot of documentaries. I did The Shine, I did the A&E, I did the Discovery Channel. I did the Fox. You know, I've been in a whole lot of different documentaries, and I'm always on the Art of Dialogue. So the people been getting most of the information from here anyway.
Yeah, man, you always on here, man. Always got to bring you on. So with that being said, man, I want to get right into the documentary, man. How you feel about the documentary, man? The behind the scenes footage, they got a Diddy leading up to him getting arrested. How you feel about all that, man?
Well, what I feel about the documentary, they left a whole lot of key things out. If they was going to do something and they're going to say in the reckoning of Sean Combs, the reckoning, or Diddy, the reckoning and stuff like that, it should have been a lot of people that we lost because of him. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't only Big. It wasn't only Tupac. You understand? For the atmosphere that he put those kids in, you got a guy named Anthony Wolf Jones, who was from Bad Boy, from its conception, is doing security and being one of the financiers of Puff having to have some money to keep Big and Craig Mack around before he got to Clyde Davis. You know what I'm saying? They wasn't able to tell that story because they didn't have no intel on that story or what went down, or they didn't do their investigation right.
Gene Deal's participation provided the narrative an alternative significance. As Diddy's previous protector, Gene has consistently declared one reality. Nothing surrounding Diddy occurred without lenses. Based on Gene, filming was standard. Consultations were captured. Functions were archived. Even instances intended to appear confidential frequently were not. Not for security, not for recollections, but for authority. Gene has implied that Diddy assumed archiving was safeguarding, proof of agreement, proof of attendance, proof of influence. However, documentation functions both ways. Once it exists, it can outlast allegiance. When Gene Deal discussed unreleased recordings, he did not appear startled. He appeared unstartled, nearly composed, as if he had been anticipating this instance.
Everybody want to say that 50 Cent did the whole documentary. He was responsible for doing the whole documentary, what goes in there and what goes out of there. Now, I don't believe that. And I don't believe that he's responsible for everything that goes in there. I don't believe he's responsible for everything that goes out of there. Guys want to say that he's snitching, you know what I'm saying, because he's telling his truth about what went down and what he saw or what he heard or whatever like that. I don't know how to love my enemy. And if I gotta put out the truth about something that he was doing and is wrong, and that was wrong, I don't have no problem with that 50. Not a problem at all. Keep doing it. Maybe enough men will come out and speak out on some bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they're saying that Diddy's family is preparing a $1 billion lawsuit over this documentary.
I think they dropped it already. I don't think they ain't gonna have a chance, because before you put something out like that, they're gonna dot their I's and cross their T's. They're gonna make sure everything is in place. And if Puff had friends over there at Netflix, if it haven't came down, but it's showing yet. If it haven't came down yet, they ain't got a leg to stand on.
Yeah, you just made me think of something. I'm sure Netflix has 1 million lawyers, and I'm sure they have plenty of lawyers go over this thing to make sure it was airtight.
Yes, sir.
And they might probably even cut some stuff out that maybe they weren't even sure about. Just probably. Well, Gene, I appreciate you taking the time. Dope content as always. And I wish you luck, man. I know, man, you get on these interviews and they go crazy, man.
Yeah, man, listen. A lot of people want to, come at me, and everybody want to find fault in 50, find fault in me, find fault in anybody who's speaking out against the evil that was going on. But what about find fault from the person who did it? Find fault for the person who starved their artist. Find fault for the person who led an artist out there to lead to his death. Find fault in a person who set up the atmosphere for one of the greatest artists in hip hop to lose his life. You know what I'm saying? Find fault in a person that allegedly had a person sore in the middle of the night and they didn't want to be sore. Find fault in this individual who did all this crazy shit to people instead of find fault in the people who's talking about it and letting you know about it.
Why do you think people defend Diddy? That's crazy, right?
I used to really believe they really want to be in the Diddy party so bad.
He implied that what the public has witnessed is constrained, meticulously selected, and that significantly more exists that would entirely transform how individuals comprehend the circumstance. That declaration signifies because Gene is not theorizing from outside. He was inside. He observed how the mechanism functioned. Consequently, when he states lenses never ceased capturing, it reinterprets everything. It proposes that the Netflix documentary is not revealing mysteries. It is merely unlocking a portal that was consistently there. And behind that portal might be far more distressing realities. Netflix validated that not all recordings were utilized. That confession alone narrates the account because platforms seldom declare that unless the unutilized documentation is delicate. Accounts propose hours of footage were considered too hazardous. Sentimental collapses, fiscal tension, distrust, responses toward litigations, dialogues that obscured individual and judicial frontiers. Netflix elected what could be protected in tribunal, not inevitably what narrated the complete story. That determination produced a void, and into that void stepped conjecture. Online platforms, commercial informants, previous colleagues, everybody is inquiring the identical question. What didn't we witness? 50 Cent stimulated that inquisitiveness purposefully. He suggested that the recordings Netflix bypassed still exist, that his crew might still possess access, that this was not the conclusion. This is why the documentary appears unfinished. Not because it lacked contentions, but because it lacked authenticity. The instances when disguises deviate, when terror appears, when certainty fractures, Netflix shielded itself. 50 Cent shielded the tension, and Diddy's crew attempted to terminate everything. However, once the concept of unreleased recordings enters communal consciousness, quietness becomes questionable.
I didn't see this, but apparently there's another 100 hours of Diddy footage on the cutting room floor?
So Diddy is still doing press. I mean, Diddy. 50.
Diddy is not doing press.
No, he's doing
press on the yard.
He's doing press, like he's doing push-ups. No, 50 is still doing press, and obviously with the success of the Reckoning documentary, he's talking about there's more footage. There's 140 hours that he has, and each episode was only maybe an hour, I think. Mm-hmm. There was 4 episodes, so there's at least 130 something more hours that he hasn't edited or produced, and he's saying that he may put it out on YouTube just to put it out there,
like on his 50 Cent Devo page.
I don't know if it'll be on his page, but he just said, he doesn't know if he's going to release it with Netflix or through Netflix. He might just, put it out on YouTube or wherever, some other platform. But the one thing that he said that was interesting is, he said, because you see people out here trying to, say, oh, the documentary can paint a narrative, this, that, and the third. And his words were, if you see the rest of this footage, there will be no more, kind of like, oh, you can paint this narrative. It's pretty clear cut, the things that are being said in the documentary, the things that he still can't believe Puff, because he says that a lot, like he can't believe Puff actually recorded all of it.
Yeah. But I mean, so why does 50 not put that, if it's that damning and that crazy, why not put it in the doc?
I don't know why. I don't know why he didn't put it in the doc. Maybe, the stories, maybe he had more people that he would need to interview and have sit down for the documentary to kind of go through those stories that are in there. It could be a number of reasons, but the fact that he has over 100 hours of footage of, you know, personal footage and things like that leading up to the case, because the story is Puff felt like he was going to win the case.
Yeah.
And that this was going to be footage for his documentary that he would have released.
Redemption.
After the trial was done and things like that. So, you know, the amount of things that he probably was recording, you know, just going off of the fact that he felt like they were going to win the case.
Yeah. And this is my footage and these guys aren't going to put it out.
Yeah.
Like all the crazy
right.
we're going to take out.
Right.
But I mean, even I did see who I think was the director of what Diddy was trying to do had mentioned that he was on vacation or was out of town and had someone fill in for him. And that's the only footage that made it to the doc because that guy sold it. So maybe that director didn't pay the person to fill in, so he owned the footage and was able to give it away. But maybe all this other footage, 50 doesn't have permission to put out. Like,
okay,
he could have it, but the director's like, no, this is my footage. Like, you got the other because I had my mans fill in for me for 3 days, and he has that footage now.
Right.
So maybe that could be it. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like 50 is so petty that if it was that crazy, he would have just put the in the doc. But who knows? I don't even want to speculate what is on the 100 hours.
Yeah.
After Lil Rod telling me what was going on, I don't know if I want to see it visually.
I mean, you know, and for 50 to say the footage that's on there is it leaves no more room for, you know, people to kind of say, oh, you know, the narratives are being created, it's false. For 50 to say that, I mean, you know, we can only imagine the footage that he's seen and that he has. So
what renders this unreleased recording so hazardous is not merely what it displays concerning Diddy. It is what it proposes regarding the profession as a totality. Because if one influential personality archived himself this comprehensively, it provokes a distressing inquiry. How many others performed the identical action? For durations, lenses within elite environments were not solely for recollections. They were medium. Footage established allegiance. It established quietness. It established terror. Individuals functioned distinctly when they recognized everything was being captured, even if they did not entirely comprehend why. If the unlaunched footage truly traps judicial tactics, sentimental breakdown, and behind-the-scenes manipulation, it becomes testimony of how authority functions when it perceives intimidation. Not within communal declarations, not within refined consultations, but within unfiltered, confidential instances. This is why judicial crews respond so intensely.
How you feel about the documentary on Diddy? And you and 50, what's going on between both y'all? Me personally, the documentary was incredible, man. You know, shout out to 50, man, but I know you and 50, I got something going on, right?
Indeed. So originally, when I heard about the reckoning of Sean Diddy Combs' documentary that was produced by 50 Cent, I wasn't going to watch it. And I wasn't going to watch it because, quite frankly, I had grown a little tired of the Diddy case. You know, I had followed it, I had studied it, I had researched it. And at this point, the man was sentenced to 50 months in jail, I believe the time was that the feds gave him. There really wasn't much left to talk about. Everything had already been put out there, all the hours of testimony, hundreds of hours of court proceedings. There was nothing else to talk about as far as I was concerned. And then people kept texting me. They said, Dr. Umar, you got to see this, you got to see this, you got to see this. So one night, I can't go to sleep, and I decided to go ahead and watch it, and I watched all the episodes. I will say that it appeared to be very well researched from the point of view that 50 Cent wanted to portray. I don't think it was balanced in that you didn't hear anything positive at all about the man, when in fact, despite the horrendous deeds, which cannot be excused at all, I still think it would have been a little bit more credible if it was a little bit more balanced. But with that being said, the documentary was done. And after watching it, well, the first thing I'm gonna say is 50 Cent does a good job with documentaries. Putting the fact that I did not appreciate a black man kicking another black man who's already down, putting that to the side, he did a good job with the documentary. Like, I could see 50 Cent doing more of these. Now, I was on a
stream here in Philly a couple weeks ago with a young brother, and the question came up, and I said that, in my opinion, watching that documentary was an exercise in self-hatred, because it was. Whenever black people tear down black people, especially when they've already been torn down, it's self-hate, because we never show that energy with no other community. We have been done wrong so much and so often by Caucasians, and yet we never do a documentary on them. Do you realize, Art, there hasn't been a single documentary done on the police who have unalived all of these innocent, unarmed black people? Where's the documentary on the police officer who killed Tamir Rice? Where's the documentary on the police officers who murdered Breonna Taylor? Where's the documentary on the police officers who murdered Sonia Mancy or Sandra Bland or Freddie Gray or Philando Castile or Alton Sterling or Amir Pope? Look at all of this that has been done to us.
It is not merely regarding a single patron. It is regarding precedent. If recordings like this can emerge, then durations of meticulously regulated reputations abruptly become brittle. Professional informants comprehend this. That is why responses have been so hushed, why declarations are so ambiguous, why previous partners distance themselves without clarification. Muteness is not bewilderment. Muteness is deliberation. The terror is not that individuals will evaluate past deeds. The terror is that lenses capture realities that were never intended to be recognized openly. Dialogues that disclose how narratives are formed, how contentions are managed, and how authority shifts behind locked doors. If that footage ever surfaces entirely, it does not merely transform one account. It compels an entire framework into the illumination. And that specifically is what genuinely intimidates them. This narrative is no longer merely regarding a documentary. It is regarding who regulates the reality when authority disintegrates. Lenses were formerly utilized to safeguard an image. Currently, those identical lenses might disclose it.
50 Cent had a right to make that documentary. If Puffy did to that woman that 50 used to date the things that people claim he did and allowed to be done to her, even with her permission, you don't do that as a black man. That is conduct unbecoming a black man, and I would have to say that Curtis 50 Cent Jackson was justified in making a documentary art. Because if I was him, if I was in 50's shoes, I might have done a documentary too. You feel me? I'm going to be honest. You do that to my baby mom, even if I don't like her no more, even if I'm not on good terms with her no more, no matter what we've been through, you knew that was my baby mom. You knew that was my girlfriend. And you do that? You have her doing all this with you and other people, and you know that was my shorty at one time? Bro, that's a complete violation of the G Code, Art. So with that being said, 50 Cent had a personal reason to do that documentary, and I can't say he's wrong for doing it. Now, with that being said, Art, watching that documentary, I came to 3 conclusions. Number 1, black people are hypocrites. We are probably the biggest spiritual hypocrites in America. And I'm going to say that, Art, because we are the most spiritual people in America. We are the most religious people in America. We brought religion to America. We gave it to the world. But the reason I say black people, after watching that documentary, have to be the biggest spiritual hypocrites in America, is I'm seeing all these people. And I'm not talking about everybody. I want to be clear. I'm not talking about everybody.
50 Cent and Gene Deal did not merely bring recordings forward. They challenged the concept that influence ensures quietness. Netflix displayed segment of the narrative, but not all of it. And the public recognizes that currently. The most disturbing component is not what has been displayed, but what might still be concealed. Footage secured away, authenticated, unlaunched, lingering. Because once individuals assume there is more, they cease trusting what they witness. Consequently, the genuine inquiry is not whether additional recordings exist. The genuine inquiry is, if it ever emerges, will it verify what individuals already surmise or disclose something significantly worse than anybody anticipated? Inform us what you assume within the remarks beneath. If you enjoy this broadcast, Strike that join button so that you never neglect any fresh broadcasts. And until then, family, maintain it authentic.